Okay, so I'm going to begin our recorders reports for the 2025 Ecology and Entomology AGM with herptiles. So all of these recorder reports have been sent in by the individual recorders, but much more in-depth reports will be submitted to the London Naturalist. So this is just a taster of what might be coming. So Tom has reported that one of the biggest amphibian conservation threats this year is to London's highest count population of great crested gnu in the Glevelands Local Nature Reserve, which is in Barnet. And it's where a Great North Leisure Park housing development is proposed. This is one of a flurry of new proposals encroaching on green space either directly or by associated recreational impacts. See the Campaign for Rural Protection of England report that's linked there. It is hard to keep up with all the new proposals in areas previously considered relatively safe. More and more legal challenges are underway. At Gleveland's Leahart, which is the London uh, amphibian reptile group, are doing a good job mobilizing an objection. So then moving on, earthworms. This one I know a lot about because it's me. Um, One of the things I just wanted to point out, we've been having a real problem with the records that are coming through to iRecord, which is how we collate our data for earthworms, in that nearly all the records coming through from an iNaturalist are coming through as a single species, Lumbricus terrestris. And I believe it's because the algorithm that does the AI algorithm has been taught incorrectly by people. And now it thinks every single earthworm is Lumbricus terrestris. So we've been undertaking a little project in London where we've been getting people to bring live earthworms into our invertebrate study days that we run at the Natural History Museum. We've been photographing the earthworms live, submitting them to iNaturalist, and then preserving the specimens and identifying them under a microscope to get an accurate ID and getting them checked by myself as well. And then putting that on iNaturalist to try and retrain the algorithm. And we haven't got any scientific evidence that it's working yet, any statistical analysis or anything like that, but it does seem to be not making the algorithm better necessarily at figuring out what earthworm is, but making it less sure that everything is Umbricus terrestris. So we are seeing some success there. Spiders from Edward Milner. Apologies, the spider on the picture is nothing to do with the report. It was just the only picture of a spider that I personally had, nursery web spider there. So Edward's report, I'm going to just read it out to me, and I apologize in advance for the mispronunciation of all the scientific names. So overall, in London and Middlesex this year, from November to November, 134 species were recorded, rather more than last year, which was a particularly poor year for spiders. Spider numbers and diversity seem to have bounced back. Has this been for insects too? Sweep netting in Tower Hamlets Cemetery in June suggested that invertebrates in general had not yet returned to normal. However, there were one or two bright spots. Erigone dentosa, which is a money spider, a species new to Britain, was trapped at Mile End Park in June. Erigone dentosa is a North American species which had been recorded from some garden centres, but otherwise it was known in UK only from a single female caught by suction trapping near Falmouth in Cornwall 5 years ago. The Myland specimen was the first residential male in the UK and was found in a pitfall trap at Wennington Green in June this year. There were two other interesting finds, both trapped at Stanmore Common in dense bracken. These were several specimens of a small crab spider, Ozyptilla trux, Thomisidae, a fairly common species known throughout the UK but not previously recorded in London, and a single male Pachygnatha listeri, which is a tetragnathid, known previously in Middlesex only from a specimen trapped at French Grove Wood in Hillingdon. Pitfall trapping at Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park and Mile End Park continued for the 18th year, providing a dataset that is apparently unique in Europe for urban grassland. Edward has had some correspondence with a team from the University of Aachen in Germany, which is conducting similar research in urban grasslands, similarly aimed at determining if pitfall trap spiders are useful indicators of the quality of urban grassland. Debate about the specific features of spider populations, which are most critical in this context, suggests that wolf spiders, the Lycosidae, as a proportion of the annual catch, may be the simplest indicator of the quality of these grasslands, with the numbers of pioneer species and total spider diversity being other criteria being considered. All these criteria suggest that disturbance is overall the critical factor which seems to affect spider populations and by inference all invertebrate biodiversity. However, management of open spaces, including Tower Hamlets Cemetery and to a lesser extent Mile End Park and Hampstead Heath, still leaves a good deal to be desired. Pitfall trapping under tall bracken has also been conducted for a limited period at Stanmore Common as a follow-up to an experiment in 2020 in which all invertebrates under bracken were first investigated by a small team. The purpose was to inquire whether the bad reputation of bracken in suppressing biodiversity was justified or not. Most historical researches on bracken have been conducted with the express purpose of determining the best way to eradicate it rather than assessing its actual effects. The data from their experiment at Stanmore Common is yet to be evaluated, but two notable finds were mentioned earlier. Preliminary conclusions are that the negative effects of dense bracken on invertebrate biodiversity have been seriously overestimated. Field collecting has continued on a limited scale, and there have been no society forays apart from those organised by the Hampstead Heath Group, which would be reported in their section at AGM. The annual Spider Walk for the Heath and Hampstead Society took place on the first weekend in June with a more encouraging catch than last year. Spider walks for Friends of Bigwood in Hampstead, Friends of Alexandra Park, Friends of Coleful and Friends of Bluebell Wood were all enthusiastically attended, particularly the last, which seemed to fully occupy a mixed group of about 10 young children for a whole morning to the delight and frankly surprise of their parents. This experience made Edward think that as a society we should try to put on more events for young children and for teenagers if we can get them to attend, especially as even the government seems to recognise that natural history is a worthwhile study. So I think Edward, did you say there was a mistake in that needs corrected?
I know, sorry.
No.
Yeah, it's a very small error. There is actually a second record of Pachygnatha listeri from a wood about a quarter of a mile from French Grove Wood, which I didn't know about, but it's in the same, virtually within sight of my record. So it's a very small adjustment, but on the spider, the arachnological spider maps, there is that extra record.
Brilliant. All right. Thanks, Edward, and thank you for your report.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So true bugs. We've got exciting 4 new species to Britain discovered in the LNHS area during 2025. So first up, I've separated them all out on separate sides, so the picture relates to the species that I'm going to be talking about, with one exception. The sea bug, Oxycarineus Hyalipinus. I've said it completely wrong, but it's fine. Found at Chelsea Physics Garden and the NHM Wildlife Garden. It's a native to the Afrotropics and Mediterranean. Feeds on malvaceae, commonly called the cottonseed bug, as it can be a pest of cotton in the tropics. And it's found on Lavatera at Chelsea Physics Garden in July, similar to the closely related Lavaterae, which is also established in Britain. I always hate doing the bugs one because the scientific names are always the hardest. Second new species is the shield bug, Holcostithus sphaculatus, found at the Olympic Park in Stratford. I really should get Tristan to read these. A widespread European species, polyphagous on various host plants. Adults and final instar nymphs found on clematis in October. And then number 3, the plant bug Campyploma pusillum, found at Chelsea Physics Garden as well. Native to the Mediterranean, a poorly known species, which seems to be uncommon. Ecological requirements are unclear. Found in the ornamental garden beds at Chelsea Physics Garden in July. An unlikely candidate for introduction to Britain. And then the final new species is the plant bug Campyploma pusillum, which was... Have I copied the same thing twice? I've copied the same thing twice. Tristan, I might get you to jump in. What is the fourth one?
Yeah, so the fourth one is a leafhopper. It's Edwardsiana platanicola, or platanicola, however you want to say it. It's on London Plain, and it's arrived on the plane trees around the Natural History Museum. And it's been found in sort of Queensgate, Kensington Gardens area. And in in company with this sycamore lacebug, which is not actually a sycamore thing, that's also a plain feeding thing. And there are huge numbers of both these species in that part of London now on the plains. And that seems to be doing very well and is really, well established now.
Brilliant. All right, thanks, Tristan. Thanks for jumping in and
That's
saying.
okay.
Yeah, and just one last note from Tristan. The Hemiptera survey of Perivale Wood was commissioned in 2025. It's produced 173 species, wow, including 48 leafhoppers, 48 plant bugs, 13 shield bugs and allies, and 12 psyllids. So, yeah, fantastic. Right, moving on, bees and wasps with Tony Madrick. Oh, more scientific names. Uh, I don't know, Tony, do you want to read your slides?
You coward. Yeah, sure. Just quick sort of highlights of many, many national highlights, just the local ones. So we've been seeing Hoptus adunca, originally found in 2016, kind of disappeared from London records and now reappeared in two recognized sites and probably other sites where the location's been embargoed. We're just following that up at the moment. It's a fantastic little bee, very specialist on Viper's bugloss. So we need to be keeping large amounts of Viper's bugloss on brownfield sites to encourage this bee to establish itself. Keratina cyanea and Andrena pilipes, normally thought to be quite rare. We're currently revising the red list for bees in the UK, and there's no doubt that these two are much more abundant across London than previously thought. You have to look for them to find them, but they're super little bees. Andrena pilipes being a large black mining bee, Keratina cyanea being one of our smallest bees, tiny little bee that nests in open pithy stems of brambles, very low to the ground. Fantastic little bee. Found in a lot of allotments across London, particularly in East London. More exciting, we're now establishing that Celephron curvatum, which is a spider hunting mud daubing wasp. It's a new colonizer to London. It was found originally in the Natural History Museum, and we found it again this year. And I actually found it gathering mud to produce its brood cells. And I have a number of specimens I'm looking at the moment that were found on the lab windowsills up in the top of the Natural History Museum. And one's actually been sequenced, so that's really quite exciting. And then things like Hedychum rutilans, which is a newly colonizing chrysid wasp, which is a kleptoparasite of Philanthus triangulum, which is the bee wolf. That's appearing in quite abundant numbers now, but we're now concerned, excited by the fact there may be some cryptic species, or at least one, namely, I can't remember what it was called now, Viruleum, which is a very, very similar Hedychum. So we may well be recording as Hedychum ag from now on. And then just the sort of highlights, I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but the two sets of records for bees and wasps, you can see there's an increase in the number of records submitted for bees and for wasps. The top 20 have kind of moved around a little bit, with Bombus pascorum, the common carder bee, being the most commonly recorded bee. And we can kind of ignore Apis mellifera or the honeybee. But all the others are kind of where we'd expect them to be, but we've dropped two. So Osmia bicornis and Bombus humilis dropped out of the top 20. Osmia bicornis is surprised because it's a very common bee found in a lot of bee hotels in the spring. And Bombus humilis normally is being searched for because it's a rare indicator species for the Thames corridor. And there's a lot of activity from the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, for example, trying to track the bee down. So we're a bit surprised that it's kind of dropped out of the top 20, which may be indicative that there may be some changes in numbers. But overall, the number of sightings haven't changed, but the number of people looking for them has gone up. So there's a kind of observer bias there.
Oh, sorry.
Wasps. Just quickly on wasps. So wasps incredibly under-recorded, as you might expect. The top 5 are the sort of general, really common and very easily recognised species. Interestingly, hornets and Dolichovespida media, the medium wasp, have been reported in many, many more places than before. And anecdotally, although there are quite a few records of the common and German wasp, we're seeing relatively few of these this year, although they appeared late in the year. And of course, we've got the 2 newly colonizing species, a number of records for those. There's Isodontia mexicana, which is the South American thread wasp, and as I mentioned before, Sceliphron curvatum, which has come in from Europe. So 2 really interesting additions probably to our national fauna. Isodontia being a preying on oak bush crickets, so very commonly found around oak woods. And placed with oaks, and then Sceliphron curvatum, which is a spider hunting wasp, which has a very similar kind of ecological niche to our native Aplopus. I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Is anybody recording the spiders that these dreadful wasps are attacking?
They're not dreadful wasps. They're lovely wasps. No, we haven't actually.
The spider attacking ones.
So far, Sceliphron, nobody has actually reported the prey item, and we haven't found any of the nest's brood cells yet. So we don't know what they're actually preying on in the UK, but are likely to be the larger garden type spiders. It's a big wasp. They're going for big spiders.
Well, if anybody gets them and they want them identifying, please send them to me.
Absolutely. You're already on the list, Ed.
Right, so moving on to Diptera, to true flies now. So just a couple of brief updates from Linda Pryke. First of all, a note that the Dipteris Forum's Dipteris Day in AGM is taking place on the 14th and 15th of November this year at the University Museum of Zoology in Cambridge. So we almost had an A to Z of, but not quite, of flies. We got A to X this year. A big thanks to everyone who contributed fly records via iRecord throughout the year. The Lord of the Flies award is going to Benny Hawksby, who contributed a massive 30% of this year's tally. So fly recording was boosted by inputs from Martin Harvey and Andrew Halstead. Plus thanks go to Tony Madrick, who, apart from his usual bees and wasps, has been looking at hoverflies and tachynids on the field days that we've been running this year. So butterflies with Leslie Williams. So obviously in the past year we've published the Butterflies of London. A huge thank you to Leslie for a sterling job on that. It's still available from the publishers to purchase. So if you haven't got your copy, go onto the Nature Bureau to have a look. And this year is the 50th anniversary of the UK Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, so the Transect surveys. So in the early mid-1970s, the method was devised and tested. 76, the national scheme was established. In 78, Hampstead Heath became the first transect in London. Now over 30 regularly walked transects in London, with many others established. As of this year, over 2,000 UK transects, and the method is now in use in 27 European countries, with 6,000 transects worldwide. So moving on to dragonflies and damselflies from Neil Anderson. 2025 has been an excellent, possibly best ever year for the migrant red-veined darters in the London area. After last year's blank year and some recent poor summers for the species, egg laying was observed at a couple of sites as well. The lesser emperor has also had an excellent season, a combination of fresh immigration combined with consolidation of a small breeding population that Neil thinks is likely to expand. Fish from Johnny Johnson. So Giggle holds over 10 million biological records, yet only 1,500 of those relate to fish. Clearly an under-recorded group for Greater London. I think they're an under-recorded group for most areas. Yeah, and he says, well, in fact, nearly everywhere. So why the gap? Historically, many aquatic organisations haven't shared fish data with Giggle. Notably, the Environment Agency is not currently supplying data sets. Lindsay Cox from Giggle and Johnny are continuing to pursue this and encourage broader data sharing across the London network. This has been chased for the last 2 years and led nowhere. If there's interest, they'll run bankside fish survey training next year to build recording skills. So please email Johnny to register your interest, so you can get an idea of what demand there is. When the Environment Agency data are hopefully shared, LNHS and Giggle will produce an updated London fish distribution map. We have plenty of records for common species, most of the 1,500, but unusual finds do occur. For example, a dead Wells catfish was recorded on the Thames foreshore at Millwall Slipway in 2021. Unfortunately, no estimation of size of the specimen was given. A 1995 pond record of bitterling likely reflects historic ornamental stocking or occasional aquarium releases. Populations rarely persist without live freshwater mussels, as females deposit eggs in unionid gill chambers to complete reproduction. So how can people help? You can submit your fish records from London ponds, canals and rivers. Photos are especially valuable. Bankside identifications can be tricky. Include the date, site name, grid reference, water body, method, size and numbers of individuals seen and your contact details. Please check grid references. There are a few records that are in the middle of fields with no water bodies in the local area for pelagic open water fish. Share data sets with Giggle or log casual records via email to Johnny would be great. Right, and then just a couple of updates for me, and then we can get on to the main event, which is mixed talk. So, as part of my chair report, there's just two things I'm going to report on. Our invertebrate study days. So we run these monthly at the NHM. There's waiting lists for these every month now, so they're basically fully booked, and we often don't have enough microscopes to cater for everybody. So this year, over the 11 sessions today, January to November, we've had 180 people attending, which is basically capacity, and that's up 38 from last year. Our 2026 events are all available to book via the Biological Recording Company's Eventbrite page. It's how we manage the bookings. They are joint events with London Natural History Society. They're all free to attend. We encourage members to book ASAP, even as far away as August, because these do book up fast. And if you are booked on any but you can't attend, please do cancel your space because of the large waiting lists that we have. So our invertebrate field recorder days are our recorder equivalent of BioBlitzes, but just without the face painting, etc. We had 4 this year: Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, Wormwood Scrubs, Hackney Marshes, and Paradise Fields. And you can see there the number of new records that we generated across various taxa. We're looking next year at doing Paradise Fields, maybe Les Mis Abbey Woods. I forgot where one of the others was. I was just
Welsh
talking
Harp
Welsh
and
Harp,
possibly Epping Forest.
yeah, Epping Forest, possibly Tolworth Farm, probably as well. Sticking with some of the places that we've been surveying quite a bit recently. So yeah, we encourage on these days all recorders to come along. We don't care, even if you're not an invertebrate recorder, you can come along and do plants, fungi, mammals, whatever you want. It's a lovely get together, and we quite often do end up in a local pub afterwards for those that enjoy a trip to the pub. Right, let me just stop the recording.